Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Mind and Body Podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that I think is so important. We're going to talk about the menstrual cycle and strength training and how to actually sync these together. A lot of times people will talk about this topic and say all sorts of different things, and maybe even just say, don't think about it, just train like everyone else trains. But actually, the research is kind of ongoing in this topic. There's been some recent research that indicates that if a woman can sync her strength training regimen to kind of sync with her menstrual cycle, she can actually optimize her strength training. And in some ways, it can be kind of a gift in that it helps her think in a month to month basis what's the best way to train to optimize my strength training goals. So I am not the professional here talking about this. I know some of you ladies listening is like, what does Jon know? Jon knows nothing. Though I have done some research and I have done some reading on this topic and looked at the latest literature. I have Amber Boyer here, the co-host. She has done a lot of study. She trains as a woman, right? That's kind of an
Yeah.
awkward question. Uh, I
Yes,
did that on
yes, I am
purpose
a
for
woman.
everyone that's listening.
I'm glad we got
Um,
that got that
it,
down.
did we nail that down? Okay. And she also trains a lot of women. So you have this in your mind. And why this is so good for men to learn as well is because, especially if you are a trainer, you want to be able to think through this as it relates to training women and making sure you're optimizing their training. You don't want to train a woman like a man in every aspect. This is an important way to think about it. So
Right.
I'm going to turn this over to Amber. Amber, tell us, maybe give us a little bit of a rundown of the cycle, maybe some key terms that we could think of, and then lead into how that relates to strength training.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about the different phases of the menstrual cycle: the menstruation time, follicular phase, luteal phase, and how those affect the the type of lifting you should be doing, the type of intensity, and how it affects your hormones and things like that. I think you made a really good point, Jon, that a lot of people
I made a
don't.
good point.
You did. I know this is
Wow, we
shocking,
should write
but
this
we're gonna go
down.
ahead and let you sit on that.
My ego just went up. I made a good point. No. Go.
Don't let your
Sorry,
head
go
get too
ahead.
big. It won't fit in the screen. Oh,
Ouch. Wow, that was a good jab. I'm going to get you later for that one somehow.
there. But most people don't really think about hormones and how they affect the gym and things like that, because most of the time when you think of strength training, you think of men, right? And women tend to not do a whole lot of strength training. Now we are kind of watching a transition happening. Like the current muscle mommy Instagram TikTok phase is like coming into coming to be a really big thing, which is actually very exciting to watch. But prior to the past couple of years, and depending on what generation you're from, most women tend to go for cardio, right? Cardio burns fat, burns more calories, gets you sweaty. So that makes you skinnier, right? Because so many generations, women are supposed to be thin, and
It was like starve yourself.
cardio is the way to go.
Yeah, just like starve yourself, do
Yep.
cardio, maybe some anaerobic type stuff.
Yeah.
That was kind of like 80s was really high at that time, and then into the 90s. I
I was
think
say even
two,
the early 2000s, if you look back at Hollywood magazines, how actresses were um, eating and how
that's
they were
yeah.
exercising. It was very aerobic, and and they were thin as a rail, right? Which is a whole nother subject. Um,
We need to have
on
that subject
that.
sometime. That would be
We
good.
will. We definitely will, because I've got lots of thoughts on that. Um, but what people don't really realize is that most of the time, the bodies like that women want, strength training is a requirement. You have to have muscle. You have to build muscle in order to get the shape that they want. What women don't realize is that we only have 10% of the testosterone that men have. And so we do not build muscle the same way you guys do. And it's very unfair, but it's fine. But you have
Notice
this
I did not say anything. I was like, I'm going to stay quiet. I know when to speak and not to speak. Go ahead.
smart man.
Mm.
But like women want shape, they want muscle, they just don't want to be bulky. Well, the good thing is that with strength training, it's really hard for a woman to get bulky. You would have to eat an excessive amount of food, or take some sort of testosterone supplement in order to get that kind of bulky. So that's not really a fear that women really need to actually lean in on, because most of the time women don't eat enough, first of all, and two, most people aren't taking any sort of enhancing drug. So weightlifting and stuff like that is just merely going to have benefits and get them the shape they want versus making them look manly. And like that's something that I just want to squash right off the bat, because I can't tell you how many times I get a client that'll come in and be like, I want muscle and I want to lose weight, but I don't want to look like a man. And I'm like, that's not a problem. We can do
Yeah,
that.
that's such a good point. And even really, like, most men struggle even putting on the muscle size. Like they
Yep.
actually might want to look big and massive, and they're like, man, it's taking me for years and years and years, and they're not eating enough protein. And even
Mm-mm.
with the testosterone levels that they have, it takes a lot of work to put on muscle mass.
It
But now you're
really
right.
does.
It's a misnomer if a woman thinks if I lift really heavy, I'm going to be really bulky and unattractive, and my voice is going to get lower, and I'm
Yeah.
going to, I'm going to grow a beard. And well, I mean, but seriously though, there are people that kind of they connect these dots in that way. It's like it's just
Yes.
not true.
No,
Yeah.
it is legit. I agree. Um, so we're gonna quick go through a couple of the benefits of women in strength training. I'm gonna graze over some stuff because it's stuff we've talked about in one of our past podcasts, and I know we're gonna end up talking a little bit more about it next week as well. And then I'm gonna get into some of the specifics of the hormonal phases and why I kind of I'm leaning more into this research because I have found personal benefit in it. So physical benefits of women lifting in general: muscle retention and gain, which is good. Most women want that. Like you and I have discussed before, after the age of 30, if you don't do anything to combat muscle loss, you will start to lose a certain percentage every decade. So that's just normal. And if you don't exercise and actually do strength training and weightlifting, you're going to lose muscle mass. And then that makes so many other aspects of life a lot more difficult. And then this is something that women don't think about, but women are really prone to osteoporosis and osteopenia. So osteoporosis being brittleness of the bones, osteopenia being lack of density in the bones, which both can be combated by weightlifting. And you touched on this a couple weeks ago when we talked about the more muscle you build and the more tension you build in the muscle, the more your bone builds up in order to support that. And because women are prone to that, because one, we are the children bearers, and so we reproduce, and so we lose out of our own bodies when we reproduce, right? And so that's why we're more prone to it, and why we should be weightlifting and doing things like that to change that, right? Also, I was reading an article a couple weeks ago saying that the muscle density of a mother determines the muscle density of a child. Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Wow.
it's some new research that is happening, but the article was super fascinating. So a lot of the health of a baby comes from however healthy the mother is. And I'll be interested to read more articles on this, but if that is the truth, then women who want healthy babies and strong kids, like, the healthier you are, the bigger chance you're giving your kid to be the same.
That's
And like
really
that's very
interesting.
driving. Like for a
And
mother who is for women who are naturally nurturing and things like that, like that's a huge driver. And I think so often is women um put themselves aside for others so much, and they won't go to the gym, or they won't do something that makes them happy, you know, they won't take time to take care of themselves. And not only do they lose out, but their loved ones lose out from the best versions of themselves. And this
yeah,
is just another prime example of that.
kind of unrelated. Well, it's
Mhm.
related to what you just said, but Bethany was sharing with me. For those who are listening, and Bethany's my wife. She's amazing. But she was sharing something with me. It was like a video, maybe like a reel or something like that, where there was this grandma who was like in really good shape. I think she was probably in her 60s, probably late 60s, but she was jumping off the this deck basically into a lake. She was like hardcore. And I
Oh
actually
my
I
gosh.
was watching it. I didn't even know why Bethany was showing me this video, but she jumped off and I was just like, dang, man, that grandma could jump. And
That's
she's like in
amazing.
the water, laughing, having a good time. And it was just so unique because you just don't see people at
You
that
don't see
age
that.
still having functional strength. Don't know this lady. Probably could guess she has some type of strength training regimen
Yeah.
to keep her moving. And so, like
Super
all
active
quality of
lifestyle.
life, being able to incorporate that is huge. So, so tie this in to, you might have more you want to digress. So feel free to fill this out more. But how does this tie into, obviously, a woman should do strength training,
Hmm.
but hey, there's some times in the menstrual cycle where, yeah, you just feel totally beaten, tired. Are you telling me that I just need to train with this intensity all the time? How does this work? Did I get
Sure.
ahead of myself? You can
No, you're good.
backtrack this a little bit if you want to.
No, you're good. No, this is a great way to like transition into this. So yeah. So for those who don't really know how it goes is like women's circadian rhythm is different than men's. Men's circadian rhythm, you lucky guys, is a 24-hour clock. You reset every night. Women, on the other hand, because we are the bearers of children, the reproducers, um, we have an approximate 28-day circadian rhythm. That varies from woman to woman. It can vary from like 26 days to about 32. But obviously, 28 kind of falls right in the middle ish. So that's kind of what we're basing off of today. So that being said, to give you a breakdown of a general menstrual cycle, day 1 through 5 is your approximate menstruation time. All right. That's the average, is about 5 days. And then you go into your follicular phase. All right. That is approximately 10 days. And then you have your luteal phase, and that's approximately 2 weeks. All right. So all in all, kind of falls into about a 28-day span. That being said, your hormone levels for women vary, different hormones through those different phases. And therefore, your body responds to exercise and a ton of other things differently through that. And I think that's where, no offense, but that's where men don't understand when they think like women have mood swings. We literally do, but it's like, it's hormonal dips, right? And that's why we come across differently. Um, which
I
sounds,
think
sounds
culture.
crazy.
Do you agree with this? Do you think that culture is starting to talk a little bit more open about menstrual cycles, where in the past it was a little bit more like, shh, don't talk about that, shame,
Super taboo.
unclean, and now it's a little bit more. I'm sure you. I mean, you have an older generation that still kind of
Mm,
makes it taboo, but if being able to talk about it, I mean, I think people even relate to talking about, like, or maybe even a girl will just be outspoken and say, I'm on my period,
yeah.
and everybody, I think there's a little bit more. I'm sure there's some jerks out there, guys that are just absolutely idiots. They're out there. I'm sure you know
They
some,
are.
but I think people are becoming more empathetic and understanding.
Yeah.
Obviously, as guys, we just don't get it. Like we obviously can look at the science, but we haven't experienced that. But I do think there's generally more empathy towards it in culture for that, which I think
Yes.
would you agree or?
Yeah, I do see like the more openness to, not that it's like something you want to talk about all the time, but like it's not weird when somebody says like, yo, I'm not feeling good. Like when a female says like, I'm not feeling good, I'm on my period, like it's kind of just like common now. More so I would say in like the younger generations, like maybe your 30s and below. I think everybody older than that still super taboo. Which it is what it is. It's culture and the way people discuss things. But I'm glad it's becoming more of an open subject, because even though it's like somewhat of a private thing, there still needs to be a general understanding. And I think that without teaching young men, honestly, how to just be like chill about it and like try to be understanding, like that's what I think needs to happen more and more, for sure.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
So let me ask you a question about
Yeah.
strength training in relation to this cycle. So two hormones that are important to note. You have estrogen, what's the other one? I was talking about it to you
Progesterone.
earlier. Pro
Progesterone.
Progesterone. For
Mhm.
those who are listening in, I told Amber, full disclosure, I have a hard time saying that word. So I always like, Amber, you say it, okay? I don't, for some reason, the struggle is real. But anyways, these as I understand it, and you can kind of fill this out, Amber,
Mhm.
in the first phase, menstrual phase, and follicular phase, estrogen is actually kind of going up as it goes along. That hormone is
Correct.
spiking, and that's going to actually make you feel good and strong all the way to ovulation, where it's going to
Correct.
peak. Whereas at this time, the other hormone that we will not try to
Progesterone.
say, there we go. I'll just like cue you up for it. That hormone sees some steady climb, but it's kind of like more steady. And then when you get into the last phase, you find where estrogen starts to fall off and
Yep.
the other starts to spike as well, which kind of explains when the estrogen starts to drop and the other one starts to spike a little bit more, there is a increase in temperature, you're breathing heavy, you're tired.
Yep.
So if in phase 1 and 2 you're starting to see a steady climb all the way to ovulation, and then after that you start to see where it declines even into that, the last week or two, you're
Yeah. The
just like
luteal phase.
feel tanked. How would you first, am I tracking? Is that how you would describe it
Yes.
basically? Then how do you plan a strength training regimen with these phases in mind? I'm guessing you want to do a lot of heavy lifting strength training focus early on, the early phases. And then when it
Mhm.
starts to tank, you would probably do some type of adjusting. What does that look like?
Sure. Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. So in the latter half of your menstruation, right? So you're usually the first 2 to 3 days are crappy. All right. So a lot of women don't really do much as far as exercise goes. It kind of depends on how their particular period affects them, right? But the latter half is when your estrogen starts to spike up, and then you move into that follicular phase. When your estrogen is high, women are at their best. We're ready for battle. We are ready to protect. We're feeling strong. We're feeling unstoppable. And this is what this hormone does to us. It makes us feel really good. We're more aggressive and less likely to back down from an event, or weightlifting, or from doing things, because we're feeling more energized, we're sleeping better, all the things. So this is when the time to optimize your strength training, this is when you do your PRs, this is when you do try new exercises, this is when you go hard, you lift heavy. This is the phase that women want to focus in on, um, if they really want to get super strong, right? This is what I usually encourage. Towards the end of that follicular phase, your progesterone starts to go up, your estrogen starts to go down and you start to go into ovulation and the luteal phase. So ovulation is the start of the luteal phase, which is where your body is dropping the egg and prepping for a baby, or the chances of a baby, right? That's what this is. And so your body goes essentially into protection mode, right? So your temperature goes up to incubate the egg, essentially. And your progesterone kind of just starts to prep your body for all of that. This means you're hungrier. So you're either going to have a higher hunger level and you're going to eat more, or you're going to have a higher hunger level. And if a woman is on a diet, then she's going to have a harder time sticking to that diet, right? So when women are wondering, like, why can I stick to a diet so well for a couple of weeks and then I fall off? Boom. This is probably why. And most people don't think about that. And I'm just going to touch in on that for a second, because most women don't track their cycle. I'm going to be honest, I'm 28 years old and I did not start tracking my cycle until last year. I basically was like, yeah, I get a period every month. Like, there's not a whole lot of like deep education behind this. And I think that it's definitely something that needs to be talked about more, because then women can understand their bodies more. Because if somebody doesn't explain this to them, they have to do their own research. And a lot of people don't. They just need to be educated. And that's why I wanted to bring this subject on this today, so that women can be like a little bit more aware and be like, oh, this makes so much sense. So that being said,
And you don't see
and
this like on Instagram, right?
you
Like, I mean,
don't.
maybe a little bit more, but like, it's just like you only see like the wins of people on Instagram. Like, look, I just crushed this workout. I just crushed the set. I mean, a few people will say, hey, look, I'm a real human. Look how I failed this set or whatever. Or,
Mhm.
hey, there's a few women trainers I think that are really opening up to being honest about where they are in their cycle, how they train, and how, like, man, I did not want to train today. This was terrible. Here's how I adjusted. I was supposed to do leg day today, squats, but because I'm, in this particular part, I'm really tired. So they ended up actually tweaking, saying, hey, I actually might be stronger in a couple more days. So I'm going to
Yeah.
save my squats for that, which I think is super smart. But that those ladies have figured out how to train and sync their training with their cycle, which is
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
And it's literally that. So I'm going to play off that for a second. You're going to come into the gym, like women come into the gym and they're like, I'm just not feeling it today. I'm not feeling good. Sis, that is your sign that you either didn't eat enough, haven't been sleeping well, you're under a lot of stress, or you're in your luteal phase, maybe all four. I don't know. But it's okay to have those down days. It's okay to have that week that you just need a break and you need to go easier on yourself. And women are so hard on themselves when one week they can lift 200 pounds in a deadlift and the next week they're like 165 feels really freaking hard. And they don't know what happened. This happened. It's your natural hormones coming into play. And does it suck? Yes. Is it nature? Yes. You can't do anything about it. And so this is why optimizing your training according to your cycle is so key. Being understanding with your body, knowing that just because you mentally want to have control doesn't mean you can just change nature, right?
I like the way you said that, because we talk about science-based training. Well, this takes
Yes.
it to another level that's like particular to women in thinking through the science. And instead of fighting the science and
Yes.
biology, we actually sync with it to optimize. And yeah, to your advantage for sure. So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Um, so if you're training pretty heavy, um, for obviously if they're in a strength training regimen, so
Mm.
menstrual phase, follicular phase, you're training pretty heavy. What do you do? What are some ways that you adjust when you start to get into some of the other phases?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. Honestly, the the best thing that you can do is you can focus on more technical movements. You can work with lower weight, higher amount of reps so that you're working your body in a different way and it's less strenuous. And honestly, taking a little bit of time for recovery, deload, working on your mobility in this time. All of these things are ways that women can optimize their strength training because you still are working, you're still building muscle, you're still burning fat, you're still making progress, but our progress and the road that we should be going about it looks different than guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're completely biologically different. And I think that that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, but science dictates that we have two different circadian rhythms. So that basis alone right there says that we should be eating differently, training differently, all the things.
Yes.
So,
So some of the experience I've had with like helping like women in training, I also help my wife with her training, and she's actually helped me learn more about this as well. Like, stop training me like a man, you idiot, type of thing. She's helped me kind of step in line. And so I've learned some things, we've learned some things together, but she has dialed this in, I think, to a great level. One of the things that I do in helping women train would be to think first, you want to back off in intensity,
yep,
which probably looks like regulating, not necessarily doing totally away with progressive overload,
right.
like, but I wouldn't try to do any big leaps during this time. Any type of, it might actually be good to say um, during the phase where I would be struggling a little bit more, feeling it out. Maybe you would have a strong day, weekday, you might have to rearrange exercise like we talked. But really, being able to say, I'm going to try to keep maybe a little bit subpar weight. I'm still lifting heavy. I'm still in the particular rep range, but I'm going to
Mhm.
increase my volume.
Yes.
So it's less in the intensity drops, but my volume increases. So I'm going to do a couple more sets, suboptimal when it comes to weight. But actually, if you add up my volume, I ended up doing more weight and volume than I did last week. But it's not so systemically fatiguing because
Right.
you're not, the percentage of weight that you're working with is a little bit, it's lighter, so you're able to do that. I also recommend, I talked about this in I think a shorter video, not only like going from intensity to volume a little bit, but also going from max effort lifting to where I'm like, man, I'm really trying to um, lift as much weight as possible within the rep range that I have picked out. Now I'm going to switch to more, you mentioned earlier, a technique style.
Yes.
It's called dynamic effort lifting. So instead of max effort, it's dynamic effort, to where I'm doing the same exercises and I'm actually doing the same rep ranges, but I'm cutting that weight down sometimes as much as to 50%, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to train for speed. I'm
Hmm.
just trying to work on that explosive or that ballistic type lifting style, which if you train that way, you actually can get stronger because
Yes.
you have that velocity in that lift that really increases those fast twitch muscles, that helps you neurologically fire faster. So you're kind of like, hey, during this time, I'm going to focus on training lesser with a smaller load, but explosive, maybe increase my volume, but I'm going to get stronger in that way. And so when I come back to the max effort, when I feel like it, I'm ready to go. And I
Yes.
know that Bethany has done this with some great, great results. She's like, okay, I'm going to go put in the work, volume, getting that type of training in. And then when it comes back around menstrual phase, follicular phase, she's like, okay, I'm going to kill it. And I can always tell too.
I
And
told you
she
we get intense.
totally surprises me. I love seeing her get into that really intense mode.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
that's
and like
kind of some
that's
things that
exactly it for me as well. Like I get pretty intense. Like this week, I'm in my follicular phase, and I'm like, let's lift heavy weights.
that's awesome.
Literally
Um,
though.
I think too, like obviously, strength training is really demanding. It's so systemically fatiguing.
Yes.
I think what you said too, just kind of keep it in mind, is like hey, it's okay to deload, and it's okay just to say, you know what, today's not the day. I'm gonna move my body. Like I'm just gonna go for a walk. That's not obviously strength training, but it's like, hey, I'm gonna take a break today. I'm gonna just get some movement in. You know, I'm gonna trust where my body is,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, for strength to continue to move forward, it's really just you only need a couple of strength training sessions a week. So if you feel bad
Right.
on a day, you had it planned, just be willing to listen. And I think that's one of the key things too, because you can kind of map this out like day 1 through 5, I train this way. Day 6 through 15, I train this way. And then okay, now I need to start dialing it back 16 through 28. I'm going to start to kind of change the way I operate. I think that's good, and I think
You
it's
just
good to.
rhymed.
Did I rhyme? Uh, that's awesome. I'm speaking in rhymes. Have you ever seen the Grinch?
Sorry, that just threw me off. Oh my
Have you ever seen
gosh.
the Grinch with Jim Carrey?
Yeah,
And he's like, I'm speaking in rhymes. Do you
of
remember
course
that
I
scene?
have. I am a
So that,
Christmas nut.
oh, that's right. We need to talk about this because I am a Christmas nut, and so is
Oh,
Bethany, but she's also a little bit of a Grinch when it
oh my
comes
god.
to like early Christmas music. Like she likes it, and I've kind of rubbed off on her because just the other day she was like, "I'm feeling bad. I'm gonna turn on some Christmas music," type of thing. But she got that from me. That took years.
That's so
Years.
cute. You guys have been married, what, 12 years, right?
Yeah, yeah,
How
and
many
it,
years did
but
that take?
like 11 and a half. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my
I'm
god.
just teasing. But
She's
she, I,
gonna kill us when she listens to this
oh, I
episode.
know, I know. It's like you probably just want to skip that one. I mean, you already know all this
You
information,
don't need to listen to this one, Bethany.
right? But no, she loves the Christmas season, but she's a little bit like, okay, Christmas music is supposed to start at this time. She used to be, it has to be after Thanksgiving person, but now she does the whole like November, December. I moved her to that benchmark. I,
Look
I
at
mean, I
you.
Yeah, yeah. So, but we're really similar on Christmas when you were doing those stories of like, I don't know, pumpkin spice and then like, oh, snowman, and you were doing like Christmas trees and presents. You know what I'm talking about? That's you, right? That's I'm talking about the right person. I was
Yes,
just like, oh, she's speaking my language.
I have
It's
a countdown going.
wow. When I was a kid, we used to have these rings, paper rings, and
Yeah.
we'd like do a ring, staple them together. For everyone who's listening, this is free for you, okay? And but we would sometimes do 2 months out, and we just tear a ring off every night, and we would watch the little thing get
Aw.
shorter and shorter and shorter. It was so fun as kids, but then once it was no longer like tracing around the room or touching the ground, it's like on a mantle, and we would tear off. It's like getting closer and closer. It was so much fun. I'm gonna
Oh
do
my
that this
gosh, that's
year.
such a great idea.
I'm going to revive it. For those listening in, this will change your menstrual cycle.
My God.
Maybe, maybe
Okay.
not.
Okay. Squirreled. We have squirreled hard. Let's bring us back. You
I'm
definitely should bring that back
so
for the boys,
hard.
though. We have
What was
squirreled
that?
hard. I said you should bring that back for the boys, though.
That's really good point. So back on track. Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
You guys are
So
kind.
actually, I'm gonna bring us back because you said something to me that was like, boom. I wanted to touch in on that. You said earlier, about working out just a couple of days a week and then like being like, oh, like I feel like I can't do any more. I'm gonna touch in on that because again, this comes back to like the circadian rhythms. Guys can work out like 6 days a week and be doing great. Again, you guys have this 24-hour circadian rhythm. You recover easier than women do. All of that because you have testosterone on your side and a lot of other hormones that we don't have. Women, ladies, we overtrain. I can almost guarantee most of the women that go into the gym overtrain. One of the things I have learned in the past year and a half, I used to work out 6 days a week. Hardcore. I was doing 30 to 45 minutes of intense cardio, some weightlifting, but it was like very go, go, go. And you get to this burnout stage or you get to this plateau that you can't freaking break, right? I lost 20 pounds and then I was stuck. And I'm like, Why? I'm doing all the right things. I'm dieting, I'm exercising, I'm getting enough sleep. Why am I not? And actually, this is when I myself got a personal trainer, and she was like, describe to me like what you do. So I did. And she goes, you are doing too much. Too much. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, you should only be working out, like as a woman, you should only be working out 3 to 4 days a week. Like, because our hormones are different. We respond differently. We need more recovery time than guys do. And you can literally overtrain. And when a woman overtrains, we can whack out our hormones. And this can show up in numerous ways. If you know any professional athletes, and you talk to them, a majority of the female professional athletes don't have a regular period. And it's because they train so intensely for their sport, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's where they're at in life. They train so intensely for their sport that their hormones are not what they should be. They're not at optimal levels. They're not thriving, right? So when I started putting in like only 4 days a week at the gym, I focused on strength training, and I took out a majority of the cardio. I still do some cardio, but I took out the more intense cardio that I was doing. Not only did I lose 14 pounds of fat and I gained 4 pounds of muscle, but I felt better. My period's always been regular, so I haven't had that issue. But I felt better. I slept better. I lost the weight. I've been eating more. Please notate, I just said I lost weight and I was eating more. Okay. So everything was functioning at optimal levels. Okay. So, ladies, take that as your get out of jail free card. Actually, I should say get out of gym free card. You don't have to go as often. That was a good joke. That was my dad joke for the day.
It's good though. It's solid. I like it.
You don't have to go to the gym as often as you think to get good results. That's it.
Fascinating. I'm sure that's really helpful for a lot of ladies listening in, because a lot of times the coaching is just like, get in there, work out really hard. And I do think, generally speaking, there's more literature today that actually is talking about recovery. And that's an interesting, the angle that you're coming from is an angle that is probably just not talked about enough.
Yeah.
Because we talk about, recovery, get enough nutrition. So like if you're always in a deficiency diet, excessively low, trying to be that little petite woman, that everyone is projecting on you to be, I guess.
Right.
Then, you're going to suffer with your performance. So low nutrition, body's already not functioning optimally, really hard training, too much training. On top of that, now you're beating your body up. It's almost like digging a hole and you just don't have enough time to fill it back up again with sleep and nutrition, but you continue to dig the hole anyway, expecting to build something, but rather you're just destroying it because you just keep digging this hole. So you talk about sleep, nutrition, but even understanding this, the cycle plays into how you recover and how you can actually prep yourself to when that cycle begins again and you start to feel strong, If you did it right and you did actually focus a little bit more on, I am going to do the necessary work to keep things moving, but I'm trying to potentiate the beginning of the cycle again when I'm going to be strong instead of beating myself up. And so at the beginning of that next cycle, I'm actually pretty sore and tired still. And it's probably kind of plays into the athlete idea that you just mentioned. I'm going to have to think through that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that is really, really fascinating. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to be actually thinking about that often because that's really an important concept. So to kind of tie this session up, what are some key takeaways? So here's a lady listening in. She might kind of say, okay, I need to track my cycle a little bit better.
Yeah.
We've laid out some ideas of how to do training, but maybe give just a couple takeaways here for a woman on this. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So if we're tracking cycle, modern day, the easiest way to do is, personally, I use an app that helps me track. And So that gives me just an idea of where I'm at. Then I listen to my body. I legit listen to my body. How am I feeling? Right? So, ladies, cut down your training days. Okay? Optimize yourself to, if you're training really hard, drop yourself down to 4 days. Like, that alone is probably going to be hard. So, start with 4 days. If you have been in a caloric deficit for a long period of time, I would suggest reevaluating that, especially if you've been at a plateau for a long period of time. And when you know you're feeling good, train hard. All right? Train well, train hard, train 4 days a week. Lift the weights. All right? There's so many benefits to lifting the weights. And I know we're going to talk a lot more about this next week because we're going to continue this episode and dive just a little bit more on women lifting. And then when you feel those energy levels going down, all right, listen to your body. Take the intensity down a little bit. All right. Do walks. Seriously, people underestimate the benefits of walking. All right. You're still burning calories. You're still getting movement, all the things. Take walks, work on mobility. And then, like Jon said earlier, work on technique and then work on like keeping up volume if you prefer to do weightlifting. All right. Up your volume, don't up your weight. And start there. Like, I feel like that was a lot, but start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to nuance the volume idea,
Mhm.
if you're just really just dead tired,
Yeah.
it might be to say technique is it. I'm not actually not going to change my volume either. So
Yeah.
intensity drops. I'm working on technique because volume has a way of being systemically fatiguing. Not
Mhm.
quite as much as like higher intensity,
Right.
can. But I think the nice thing about volume is like I'm putting the work in. It's not as intense, so you could do a couple more sets. But again, if you're really, really tired, it's still systemically fatiguing. So you might just say technique is where it's at. I'm going to
Yeah.
do a couple sets to help potentiate the next phase. So I think that's really awesome. Let me ask you another question. I know we were tying
Yeah.
things up, but I think a question came into my head. So somebody's on a deficiency diet. The lady's
Mhm.
trying to go on like a cutting phase. Um, how would you structure that? Would you actually how I want to phrase the question? Would you actually suggest that a lady should up her calories, maybe still underneath the um, not quite maintenance,
Mhm.
but it's if she's more hungry, she feels like she needs more fuel. Would you
Oh,
actually up the
would I
calories, or
encourage
would you
that?
keep? Yeah, you might. I'm not sure what you would say here, but I'm just curious. Somebody listening in might have that question.
Yeah. So naturally, your hunger hormones go up during the luteal phase. Eat more. Your body's asking for it for a reason. And even if you're not trying to get pregnant, like you still have this menstrual cycle no matter what. Like you get it every month. That's nature.
Yes.
So yeah, eat a little bit more. But I do encourage women, um, I'll just throw this in there. Women tend to go crazy during like PMSing, um, with their diet. Some women go crazy with like fried foods, salty foods, and other women go crazy with like the sweets and the chocolate. It depends on. It actually is based off of your cravings are based off of nutrient deficiencies. So that's another subject that's super fun. But I really encourage women like be careful of the amount of salt and sugar that you throw in during your PMSing phase because that determines on how bad your period is. Because salt causes you to retain water, which makes more pressure, and then sugar causes more inflammation, which becomes super uncomfortable. And so don't go
Mm.
crazy with that.
So if you're going to up the intake, I mean, obviously you probably
Hmm.
would have
What
a
should you be
balance.
eating?
A balance of macronutrients probably is the best, but you definitely
Yeah.
want to include uh, higher proteins, a higher
Hmm.
protein diet.
Dark
But
leafy greens.
yes, yeah. So you're getting
Hmm.
some of the not just macro but micronutrients in there
Yep.
as well.
Red meat.
Now you're
And
talking. I
yeah,
love red
yeah.
meat. I
Yeah,
know you're not
women,
talking to me.
there's a lot of women who hate red meat, but they don't understand how important the iron is. Um,
We totally need to break that down
we
sometime. That'd be a
should.
great video.
I'm gonna go come if we do that episode, I'm gonna wear my nerd glasses and I'm gonna go all in.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah.
We're gonna expect that, Um, the one thing I would say about calorie deficits that might be helpful for those listening in, a lot of times we think our daily intake, we think according to that. But
Mhm.
sometimes like if you feel like I need more food and you're on a deficiency diet, it's actually okay to come up to maintenance if the overall trajectory is actually still in that deficiency.
Mhm.
You're still going to lose weight. It may not be at the rate that you would like, but again, the best diet is the diet that's sustainable. So if you can't sustain
Yes.
it, and you're feeling terrible, and you're gonna, fall off the the track tomorrow because you can't stay on it, then it's actually good to make sure that you're getting enough nutrition and feeding yourself. And there's nothing wrong with actually coming up to maintenance a little bit, then going back on a deficiency. You know, the goal is the overall arching trajectory is actually going downward during a fat loss phase. But again, I think you want to make sure that it's sustainable. One thing I do this, and Bethany does this as well, is we try to factor in a deficiency over a week period of time. So a full week, factoring it in. Of course, you don't want to go crazy like, hey, today it's 5,000 calories, but the rest of the week I'll do, really, really low. That's not good either. But
No.
within reason, you can say, hey, I'm going to go a little bit higher. If you had been tracking like at a 300 to 500 calorie deficit for a cutting phase, actually going up and saying, hey, I'm still not quite up to maintenance, but I'm going to eat more today. I'm going to have that, whether it's a snack, whether it's protein, whatever it is, totally, totally fine. And you can still keep on track with your diet. Even though right now what we're talking about is two different things, nutrition and weight loss. We'll get into a whole planning on the future, doing a whole season on fat loss. So we'll save
Yes.
more content for that. But hopefully that was helpful to you, everyone listening in. Amber, do you have any closing remarks that's full of wisdom?
I love it when you throw this at me
I
because I
do.
never do. No. Um,
Pressure,
no,
pressure,
the
pressure.
only other thing I want to say is like we're gonna dive a little bit more into this, a few more specifics next week. We're gonna have Bethany on here and we're gonna talk about like as a mom, how strength training has helped her and affected her. We'll talk about a little bit about my personal story, about how like my hormone journey, the story of miscarriage and how strength training has changed that. And we're just going to go into some more detail and maybe some relatable things that women are going to be able to connect with, coming up next week.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. This has been so fun. I liked our time together, Amber.
This was a
We
good
had
one.
some good laughs. It went some crazy directions. So be sure that it'll probably go crazy next week too. We hope you guys will join us. Have a great day.